All right, thank you for the warm welcome and thank you for all the other outstanding presentations. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm here tonight to talk about green schoolyards and why they're important and worth pursuing. And green schoolyards are schoolyards that welcome and cultivate nature on the school campus. I think one of the best ways to understand a green schoolyard is by what it is not. And that's the schoolyards that many people in America and even here in Flagstaff grew up with back in the day. I kind of think asphalt and kid burnt cinders. I went to Sechrist just outside the door here, and at that time that playground was just entirely cinders. Luckily for me, the forest was right outside the door, so we did have nature. And in my sister's grade, there was one of the buffalo got loose back in the 70s. So for a brief period, there was a buffalo. So that's pretty cool nature. But the reasons to have green schoolyards are because nature is our best teacher. And nature, as we know, inspires curiosity. And it's an entry point into science and our relationship with the world. When it comes to food in school gardens, research has been done that when kids help grow food, they're interested in eating green food like vegetables and things, and I've seen that with my own eyes quite a bit. I also want to talk about equity and access to nature. Like I said, here at Sechrist, I had the National Forest, and in the family that I grew up with, I got to go to the Grand Canyon, I got to go hiking, I had nature in my life every day. I can't tell you how many young people I've worked with here in Flagstaff who have never seen the Grand Canyon. They've never been up on the peaks. There are quite a few kids I work with who've never been to the Buffalo Park. So if you don't have families that are helping you cultivate that relationship, having access to nature is not something that we can take for granted. I also want to talk about daily access. We're lucky here and in many places to have field trips and get to go visit nature. And those are, of course, great and important. There's also a lot to be said for daily access to nature. And a great example is at Ponderosa High School here. Our first period steward class has started to revolve around an orb weaver spider that we've been visiting and feeding every day. And in the process, finding another one, and now another one. And now we have about 20 spider nests that we visit on a regular basis. And we're comparing the sizes of them and the difference between males and females and conjecturing about what's happening and finding their egg sacs. So it's that daily access to this nature that's really making a difference. And in this case, students who might be more interested in their phones are finding a definite curiosity in this class. It's just an example. The other reason for green schoolyards is just learning styles. Many people learn well with books in the typical classroom. Many people learn better with their hands, with their eyes, and sensory relationship with the world. We work with a lot of kids who don't thrive in the classroom, and then their teacher says, Jimmy's doing so well and is now a leader in the class and is performing beautifully, and because this student is able to thrive out there in nature at school. Nature is also our best therapist. Having natural infrastructure at school, seeing butterflies, seeing birds, being around trees is needless to say, helps with anxiety. It helps people just feel better. Nature at school is also a great form of climate action. When I went to school, I remember watching a movie about the rainforest and seeing the thing at the end where it said, in the time it took to watch this movie, 10,000 acres have been destroyed, and feeling horrible about that. And sometimes climate anxiety affects young people, but then it's hard to know what to do about it when we hear about this stuff. But dealing with nature and taking action about, environmental issues and whatnot on a daily basis through taking action at school really helps young people feel empowered and hopeful and develop some skills and knowledge that they can take out there into the world with them. And then lastly, want to just mention culture. The typical kind of American schoolyard is pretty flat, and one of the opportunities we have on schoolyards is to represent and celebrate and make feel at home people from all different kinds of cultures and backgrounds. We're working on a project, trying to support a project at Flag High right now, where we're converting one of the courtyards into kind of a mini Hopi land with a small Hopi house and a plaza, and then working towards planting Hopi crops and representative Hopi plants that mean something to those students to help them feel a sense of place at the high school. So these are just examples of why green schoolyards are important. Let's talk a little bit about how to go about designing, building, and stewarding green schoolyards. This is where TerraBIRDS comes in. My background is in landscaping. I had a small business and also doing wetland ecological restoration. I had a client ask if I would do a garden program with her 4th grade class back in 2009. And after literally that first day, I found, kind of like the gentleman with the caves, I found that this was my calling and started doing it ever since. And the way that I've approached school gardening is not to build gardens out for kids, but kind of like teaching to fish, building it with the kids. And that's been the reason to form TerraBIRDS, is to support school communities and teachers in leading garden programs in the schools. We go in there and for 6 or 8 sessions in the spring and 6 or 8 sessions in the fall, we'll work with school communities to engage the kids in visioning, designing, building out, and then stewarding these green schoolyards themselves. We also have an after-school youth jobs program for high school students to get paid to do this work. But the key point is here is we design big projects, not small one-off little garden plot, but go for a big vision to really transform school grounds and engage kids in stewardship of that. And in so doing, we talk a lot about legacy. So what you're doing today, we're not going to finish this. We're just going to get it started, and this project will carry on for years. This picture of Ponderosa High School is an example. That first picture up in the upper left-hand corner was in 2011. This is the site roughly now or a year or so ago, and we've been working on that for 13 years now and still going. So the other way we approach this is just through teaching hard work, safety. Kids' favorite thing about our TerraBIRDS work we do with them is they get to use the pickaxe and use adult real tools. And it's amazing how important that is to young people to be empowered to do the work themselves. I think last spring's best story for me was working with the 5th graders at the new Killip school. As many people know, they were quite literally up to their knees, flooded out of their old school, had to leave there prematurely, went to the other side of town. When they came back to their brand new school, granted it was a beautiful new school, but it was also a pretty sterile environment. And those 5th graders set about building out the new garden, along with kids from all the grades, I want to say. But those 5th graders moved in about 18 cubic yards of soil, built 12 raised garden beds, planted trees, and by the end of their spring, a whole new life was arriving in Killip. And for them to go through that and to be part of the change in the new Killip was pretty exciting for them. Want to talk about resourcefulness. We also try to really teach young people to just be resourceful. We don't always buy our way out of or into projects or always need money to go get stuff. Learn how to be resourceful and make do with what you have. Make do with the skills in your community. We gather leaves from the neighborhood to make mulch. Just simple things like that to teach kids that you can find what you need to make the world happen the way you want it. The other way we do this is through teamwork, either directly or indirectly. We work with a tremendous host of partners, and I really celebrate Flagstaff for this. I think we do a great job. Festival of Science is an example of that. But we work closely with the University of Arizona Cooperative Extension Service, ETA, Hopi Levi, and Deborah Onse. We work with Native Americans for Community Action. We have Camp Colton, Willow Bend, Grand Canyon Youth, Arizona Trail Association, the Colton Community Garden, the Just Cultivate Coalition, Townsite Urban Farm, Food Link, Flag Cooperative Preschool, the Rising Leaders Program at Grand Canyon Trust, NAU Sustainable Communities Program. These are just some of them, but I bring them up because it's all together we form this continuous track of nature experiences, for our Flagstaff kids. And what TerraBIRDS niches in that is providing that daily green schoolyard. I did not list all of our school partners because there are many of them, but I do want to mention Ponderosa High School here has been our host for all these years, and they're our work family, if you will. Another way we do this is through coalitions and through kind of national outreach. I want to give a shout out to the Children and Nature Network and the National League of Cities. They've welcomed us into something called the Cities Connecting Children to Nature Initiative. And together with Flag Unified School District, the Cooperative Extension here, and the City of Flagstaff Sustainability Department, TerraBIRDS is part of this Green Schoolyards Flagstaff that works together towards this vision. And we're presently working with the NAU Geospatial Research and Information Lab, NAU GRAIL, to create an interactive GIS story map of not just the schoolyards, but any kind of youth nature education sites in northern Arizona, so that we can, using pins and call-out boxes, highlight features of these, but then also zone out the grounds of the schools so that we can start to create different maintenance protocols and kind of create a separate category from regular, maintenance, if you will, let's say FUSD, and create a youth stewardship maintenance category so that we can more efficiently engage young people in being stewards of their school grounds, and in many cases, hopefully pay them. So what do we get after we create these green schoolyards? We get food gardens, we get habitat areas, we get natural areas, we get sustainability demonstrations like rainwater catchment, stormwater management. We get culturally welcoming and educational campuses for people from different backgrounds or from a variety of backgrounds. So in summary, these green schoolyards are outdoor learning laboratories. They're an extension of the school out to the very property edge of the school, we hope. And these are STEM labs where people can practice the STEM skills of teamwork and patience, problem solving, critical thinking. They're an extension of the gym for health and wellness activities. These schoolyards are like a civics lab, because when you have a school garden, you have to cooperate and decide who's doing what where and who gets to do what, who makes the decisions, who's deciding what weeds do we pull or which ones do we leave for habitat, things like this. So these are civics opportunities. And most importantly, these schoolyards are beauty. They're prideful and they're hopeful landscapes. I think I counted when my son went from the co-op preschool to 5th grade at Marshall, he walked up and down the Marshall garden, probably 6,000 times, not to mention the after school times. So if you look at those as advertising impressions, walking up and down that garden gave my son and other kids at Marshall a vision for how the world can be, as opposed to just a stark, hard pan, dirt. So, and also, most importantly here to this discussion, we get healthy, well-rounded kids and hopeful kids who've developed some skills, who've learned a little bit about who they are by being outside in the school garden. One of my favorite memories is a young man named Luke who never really worked. He never really did much, but he was right in the middle of building out the Puente School Garden, and he was a comedian, and he kept everybody laughing and engaged. And so, working in the school garden helps us figure out a little bit about who we are. So last but not least, I'll just close with, people have asked about the name TerraBIRDS. Where does that come from? I think that birds are kind of universal symbols of transformation for humans. For millennia, we've been naming our spiritual traditions, our sports teams, our mascots after birds, and I think it's because birds inspire us. Birds fly. Birds have a sense of humor. Birds talk. They build homes. They partner for life. They migrate. They come in myriad shapes, colors, and sizes. So I think birds are amazing mascots for us. And they're also amazing symbols of transformation, whether you think of it spiritually or evolutionarily, birds are survivors and have transformed from dinosaurs or from the ashes, however we want to look at it. Birds are symbols of transformation. So they certainly inspire me, and I think they inspire kids. So hence the name TerraBIRDS. There's an acronym in there of being innovative, resourceful, dedicated stewards, which embodies a lot of the values we try to work with kids. And I'll just close with just saying our vision is we hope that every school has a green schoolyard, and not only has one, but that every kid in his or her experience at school gets a chance to help steward these, help create them, and truly have a daily relationship with nature on their school grounds. So with that, I thank you. And all right.
Thank you, John.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Really well done.
Thank you.
Something I find really interesting about TerraBIRDS, we talked a lot about, can we get kids out to nature, go on a hike? I don't know how many kids you try to convince us to go on a hike. It's not easy. Or like you said, we live near the Grand Canyon. What can we do? I hadn't really thought a whole lot about, well, let's just bring nature to kids. And that's what you've done. So I think that's amazing. Especially a lot of our parents, it's, well, we got to go to soccer and then hockey and then figure out how to get a second job to pay for hockey. Maybe have a wife who works a weekend or two. Well, my question is this. I love that you and your organization are bringing nature to kids, and not just they get to see it, but they actually put their hands into it and they're physically interacting with it. How do you balance living in an arid area like we're in right now with the water and resources necessary to build these gardens at the school? And just be careful, if you are rethinking everything you've done because of this question, please don't. No. Just keep going.
No, it's a great question. I'm glad you asked. Interestingly, we typically don't use irrigation systems. I'm not against them. They can be very efficient. Learned from Brad Lancaster's presentations down in Tucson, that oftentimes, up to half of a municipality's water use comes for outdoor irrigation. There's an energy and therefore a pollution relationship with that and all the energy that's used to move water around. So we really use these green schoolyards as an opportunity to practice and model. We're in water collection when we can, but that can be expensive to buy tanks. But a lot of these passive water techniques, using swales and berms and basins to, observe and gather and capture water in ways that we can. So that's been a big part of the design and the work for kids to do on these schools, is to make those observations and manipulate, kind of terraform their schoolyard to capture this water. Mm-hmm. And then I also want to mention soil. We spend a lot of time in our programs talking about soil. Is kind of very unappreciated, I find, in our culture and in our educational environment. A lot of the soil education is dictated by kind of the NPK model. I love the drawings we saw tonight of the soil food web for that reason. People don't even know those critters exist. And so we talk a lot in our TerraBIRDS programs about, and work, we're constantly trying to cultivate healthy living soil, imagining what's in there, and then realizing that it's that living soil that creates spaces for water to enter, organic matter to hold that water, life that helps move that water around. And so it's amazing how the living soil in these schoolyards actually, conserves water and allows, like the picture here of Ponderosa High School, the water in the picture is from a stormwater coming off the street, and the surrounding vegetation, we never hand water, and it's not on an irrigation system. That's all just water, kind of our own little mini aquifer right there on the site. So it's a cool thing about the green schoolyards, is we can practice all that.
That's amazing. Well, thank you.
Thank
you
you
for
so
sharing
much.
your story.
Really appreciate it. Thank you.